Niagara region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Haudenosaunee, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The City of Port Colborne stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Council, we have 3 proclamations this evening. International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia, May 17th, 2022. World Oceans Day 2022 and the advancement of ocean conservation in Canada, June 8th, 2022. And Operation Smile, Longest Day of Smiles, June 19th, 2022. If I could have Councillors Kalaleff and Desmarais move that. Are there any questions? All in favor? And that's carried. Adoption of the agenda. If I could have Councillors Bodner and Councillor Wells move the agenda. Are there any questions with regards to the agenda? All in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening? We have 1 set of minutes, the regular meeting of Council of April the 26th of 2022. If I could have Councillors Danch and Bruno move that. Are there any questions regarding those minutes? All in favor? That's carried. The following items have been pulled for separate discussion: 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, 9.1, 9.5, and 9.6. Are there any further items? So now voting on the remainder of the items, if I could have Councillors Desmarais and Danch move the remainder of the items. All in favor? That's carried. We have 2 presentations this evening. First is Clean Community, Community Safety and Enforcement and Bylaw Enforcement Services, City of Port Colborne Municipal presentation, and that's staff.
Good evening, Council. Just want to give you a little update if the Deputy Clerk could bring up that little PowerPoint for us. There we go. So bylaw is trying to do a little something different to help the residents meet the rules and regulations that this council's put for them to keep our community clean and presentable. So what we've come up with some help from some corporate sponsors is a clean community. There we go. So what we're offering is that the residents pick up any refuse, garbage, or debris that's just laying around the house, and they can bring it to a collection. I don't know if it's advancing for me. You can go right on to the next one, please. So we don't care how you come, but we've got 2 dates. Our first one is actually May 14th. It's going to be on the east side. There are certain allowable items and certain ones that aren't allowed. No different than if you went to the Humberston dump. So what we are looking for, any broken furniture, mattresses, damaged books, magazines, toys, broken lawn ornaments, plastic pails, cushions, and even the kitchen sink can be brought to our dump or our site on Saturday between 9 and 1, and staff will help get it into a bin, take it away at no cost to the resident. There are some items that, due to environmental concerns, that cannot be brought and we will not accept. Those would include That's a little bit smaller even for me. Household garbage and waste, because we can get rid of that at the curb, so we do have limited spot. We have two 48 cubic yard dumpsters. They're very, very large, but we want to make sure that we get the stuff that people may have problems getting rid of at the curb. So please don't bring just your normal household garbage. Propane tanks, we can't take ammunition, any leftover paints, cleaning products, batteries, fluorescent light bulbs, tires, motor oil, anything like that, aerosol cans, pesticides and fertilizers, pharmaceuticals, any Freon within refrigerators, electronics, recyclables, or textiles. All that stuff, you can still take the Humberstone landfill site in Welland, but we will not be accepting it. You will be turned away. Next page. So rain or shine, our first date is Saturday, May 14th, even though it's on the east side. If you live on the west, come and visit us. When we're doing it on the west side in June, by all means, east, come to the west side. There is not a toll on the bridge that day. Hours are between 9 and 1. Our May 14th is at Brennan Paving right at the corner of Welland and the bridge there. I think that's a fairly known site. It's 198 Welland Street for those that need that GPS to help you get there. Next page. Our following date would be June 11th. We've extended that time just because we think it might be a little bigger day, just because we know May 14th is a good advertising day for us. It's going to be 9 to 3. It's going to be over at the Public Works right across from the middle bridge, 1 Kalele Street West. And of course, we can't do this without the help of some of our sponsors. So Brennan's has graciously given us the property to use. The region of Niagara will be on site to hand out some other information to help other people with their recycling and garbage needs. And Greenside Landscaping, who the city does use, has graciously donated some of their time and resources to help us make this a successful event. So the big thing, I kind of thought it was cute, keeping your yard clean keeps pest, vermins, and the bylaw officers away. And that's our end goal, is to make sure that everybody's compliant and we have a beautiful community for us all to enjoy this summer. If there was any questions?
Councilors? Any questions? Councilor Bodnar, do you have a question? No? Okay. Councilor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Chief Lawson. I just want to thank you so much for putting this together, and please extend that thanks to staff, because it's forward-thinking. It provides a means for those who may not be able to get that litter taken to the dump, a way to do that. But it also provides a gentle reminder to everybody to get their yards cleaned up, make the city better. It's just a really good program. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Through to the Chief. Scott, I'm assuming that it's not written here, but you must show a Port Colborne address?
That was going to be pretty hard on us to do, so we would prefer that people are from Port Colborne,
right.
But we will not be discriminating from.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Further questions? Thanks, Scott. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
So this time, if I could have Councilors Kalila and Beauregard move to receive this report. Questions? All in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Thank you. Item 10.2, we have Elise Dostal, Senior Manager from Service Line Warranties of Canada, to provide a presentation, and she's here virtually. Service Line Warranty Program in the City of Port Colborne Service Line Warranties of Canada. Hello, Elise. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, excellent, thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me this evening and the opportunity to share some information with you about this great program that we're looking forward to working with you on. So if my presentation can be brought up, I'm just going to not take up too much of your time and go through a couple slides with just some of the basic information, and then welcome any questions that the council might have.
Great. You got that? You can see that, Elise?
Yes, excellent, thank you.
Perfect. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm here to speak with you today about the service line warranty program. If you could go to the next slide, I'll just share kind of some of the. So essentially, we have found through our surveys and through what our municipal partners have been telling us that many Canadians are not aware of the responsibility that they have for their water and sewer lines on the private side of their property. Many people, they're kind of out of sight, out of mind, and when they do have an issue, they're surprised to find that the costs and the repair responsibilities fall on them and not the municipality. So basically, we've found through this program, we provide the opportunity to educate homeowners on the responsibility of those service lines. Should they have any, repairs or replacements that are required, then we will, if they are enrolled in the program, we will take care of those repairs. So it provides a low-cost solution for them should they have any issues in that area. And lets them know, that they are aware, they are responsible for those pipes on their side. So if you could go to the next slide. And really, we are finding also that, in the surveys, most Canadians, 31% have $500 or less set aside for home repairs, home emergencies. 19% have no savings set aside at all. I know this is across Canada. However, I think the point is just that, many people, should they have a home emergency, it can be difficult, especially those on a fixed income. So this protects homeowners from, costly expenses. These repairs and replacements can be up to thousands of dollars and can be often, very unexpected. And so through this program, if they are enrolled, it's, essentially a service plan. If they have an issue, they simply call a 1-800 number. We work with a vetted local contractor. We send somebody, and they don't have any out-of-pocket whatsoever, as long as they're paying their monthly or annual subscription, we'll call it, to the plan. We do encourage people to check first and foremost what coverage they do have through their homeowner policy. In some cases, a couple insurers have this type of coverage added on as a rider to their policy. Some believe that it's covered in their home insurance policy and then find out that the actual repairs and replacements are not, which can be quite costly. So we do recommend people find out what coverage they do have, what exclusions there are on those things. And the difference really is that many insurance policies, or almost all that I'm aware of, will have a deductible of around $1,000 for these types of repairs. If they're enrolled in this program, they won't have any deductible or any out-of-pocket expenses other than just paying the small monthly fee. And so that's really one of the benefits. It's a very low-cost option for those who'd like to have that kind of protection. Next slide, please. So currently we're at about 64 partners in Ontario. This year we're expanding into Quebec, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and we're partnered with AMO-LES. AMO-LES was actually our first partner who approached us after we responded to a City of Hamilton RFP about 8 years ago now, I believe. And then recently we partnered with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and we have wonderful partners across Ontario, really of all sizes. Anyone from City of Ottawa and Peel region to Wawa, Ontario, I think is our smallest. So we do find homeowners, regardless of where they're living, this infrastructure issue can happen to anyone. Even people we've seen sometimes in newer builds, if the quality isn't there, in some cases they can have these issues too. So regardless of where you live, this is something that, most people can benefit from. And so, those are some of our lovely partners that we have here. Next slide, please. So typically, just a couple of the stats to break down for you. We have 40,000 customers in Canada. We're now to date have saved homeowners in Ontario over $5 million. That number is specific, I think, actually to just Ontario. So $5 million in home repair costs. We've completed 15,000 jobs in Ontario. And through our foundation, we've completed 206 jobs through our CARES Foundation worth $462,000. And I can speak a bit, CARES a little bit more if that's of interest as well, is that we do provide a community fund, so to speak, so that if there is a homeowner who isn't enrolled in the program, who is a resident, and they are unable to afford their repairs, they're in a low income situation, then we will take care of those repairs for them. We do some pro bono work in the community that way, and they don't have to be enrolled in the program if they're identified as someone who needs help in that area. So that's just speaking a little bit to some of the jobs that we do there. Next slide, please. And a little bit about our contractor network. I'm sure most people, most homeowners have had this personal experience of having some difficulty finding or dealing with contractors across, over the years. So the way that our program works is we vet local contractors and make sure that they're kind of doing things up to code and that they're licensed and insured. We have a pretty rigorous quality control program on those contractors, on who we're sending into people's homes. And that way, when residents, they don't have to go out and find a contractor and then, come up with the money and then, wait for the repairs. Simply, they call the 1-800 number. We send the contractor, so it takes the work out of them finding someone. And we send someone who's doing things, properly and up to code. And they can call that line 24/7, 365. Some very difficult winters, polar vortex a few years ago, we had all of our customers thawed very quickly over the Christmas holidays. And so we're really proud of that service and that contractor network that we have. And we work in each community to make sure that we're working with the best contractors that they have available. And any of the contractors are welcome to participate in the program, provided that they meet the standards that we have for those technicians. So just a little bit about our repair plans. As you can see, it's a very affordable monthly rate for a very high level of coverage for these types of repairs. The water service line is $6 a month for up to $5,000 per call. The sewer line is $8 a month for up to $8,000 per call. And the interior plumbing and drainage, which I know it doesn't have any connection necessarily to the municipal water, but we do find many homeowners do find it to be a very valuable product to add on, simply because, that way they're paying the monthly rate if they ever need to call a plumber for any issues inside the home. They don't have any set and out of pocket expenses, which I can appreciate, as I recently had to pay a few $100s for an unclogged sink. So, and that's $3,000 per call. So the feedback that we have gotten, is that those are very affordable rates for the protection, that level of protection that they do offer. And we do find, I would say 99% of claims do fall under those coverage caps. Next slide, please. Okay, so that's us. This is myself and my colleague Adam, who's on my team. So we're happy to take any questions, concerns, and you can feel free to call us anytime with any questions about the program. And I believe that's it. So
Great.
At this time, I'll welcome any questions.
Thanks, Lisa. We really appreciate that. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Clayliff.
Oops, through you, Mr. Mayor. Could I just ask you, is there any certain amount of time that people have to be with the program? Like, if they're having issues, is that too late to come to you, or do they need to come to you beforehand?
Elise?
Right now we have it at 30 days. We do ask a couple of questions when people enroll, mostly just if they're flowing, to be honest. So, there are certain things that people could say that, they don't have as much of an issue when they enroll, and then they wait 30 days, and then that's something that can't wait, that, they call in and get taken care of. So we do have some folks who do that. But typically we keep it at a policy of 30 days.
Thank you.
But we do find, if people do have an issue, it's not the first time and it's not the last, or if it is the first time, it won't be the last. So if there is a repair or something that needs to be done, chances are that if it's infrastructure in their home, they may have an issue again. And so they do, they will see the value in being enrolled in the program, even if their existing issue isn't necessarily taken care of.
Okay, councillor, great, thank you. Further questions, councillors? Perfect, thanks Elise, really appreciate this.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, feel free to contact me anytime. My information is there.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Okay, at this time, if I can call on Councillor Bodner and Wells to move that we receive the report or the presentation. No questions or comments. All in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Thank you. At this time, we have one delegation this evening, item 11.1. Greg Plasson, the owner of Canalside Restaurant, requesting for relief for a pop-up patio. Greg? Yep.
All right, beautiful. To start off, thank you for having me here tonight. My wife made me write notes down because I seem to blabber a lot, I guess. So, we are proposing to continue operating of the hillside patio on the east side of the street of West Street. As per the last 2 years, the provincial government has given municipal governments the ability to allow extended patios to help local restaurants recover from COVID. The provincial government and our local public health officer, Dr. Hergy, has asked local government to provide more outdoor dining in the summer to help reduce the spread of COVID. The canal side does not have the ability to use parking spots in front of our business as other business in areas are able to do. The canal side has been told that we can use 2 parking spots the east side of West Street instead. We do not feel that this is in the best interest to both the city and the local businesses to use 2 premier parking spots when we have a grassy area adjacent to it that is not used as often as the parking spots. The canal side has had many customers ask us if we are going to have the hillside patio this year. There is a great demand for outdoor seating in these times, and customers have stated that they love sitting on the other side of the street and enjoying a meal along the canal. For the past 2 years, we have operated a hillside patio with no issues at all with it. The canal side has shown that the patio has added to the dining experience and tourism experience of visiting Port Colborne. The Aegis Show has given the approval to continue this for 1 more season, as we ask that our council allow us to continue this as well. We are proposing that we add proper stairs with railing up to the patio, decorative rope boundary around the patio, and solar lights to enhance the look of the patio. If council has any other recommendations to improve the look or design of the patio, we are happy to work with them on this endeavor. The canal side has for the past 2 years offered outside patio entertainment along the canal every Friday and Saturday in the summer season in order to attract customers to West Street. We have found that this entertainment has helped create a festive atmosphere along the canal that not only helps canal side out, but all other businesses as well as the city. On any given weekend night, you can find citizens and tourists relaxing along the canal, sitting on the rocks, or having takeout meals along the canal while listening to music that we have provided. This year, we are proposing to offer live music Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. We feel that adding the Thursday night will be an added bonus to our already busy Thursday night. To our already busy downtown and car show. We are hoping that this will encourage people to stay longer in town. We have spoken to most businesses on the street as well as the BIA regarding this, and everyone is in favor of the patio extension. Many businesses have told us that they have been very pleased with the patio and see the advantage of having this continue. So I am asking council if we can approve this. So hopefully we can move forward. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Greg. Questions to the presenter? Frank, or Councillor Danch? Sorry, Frank.
Yes, that's fine with me. Anyways, Greg, the only thing you're really asking is you want to put a handrail up with a couple steps, right? You're not asking for anything different that's gone on the last 2 years, right?
No, that's the only, it's worked the last 2 years, but we feel that obviously putting 3 steps there might make it a little easier for people getting up there. It has not been an issue in the last 2 years, but being proactive, we figure that that's 1 step we can help to make it a little easier. Now, we do, when it comes to handicap people, what we've been doing, we haven't really had much of an issue with it, but obviously if somebody's in a wheelchair, we just ask somebody on the other side of the patio to move to the other patio so that they have a spot. So obviously we can deal with handicap people. But I'll be honest, there's a lot of older people which very serious mobility issues, and they still want to be on that hillside, and we just help them up there to go up there and sit there and enjoy themselves.
Councillor? Okay, anything further? Councillor Borgard?
Can I ask a question of staff?
Certainly.
Yeah, okay. Through your worship to
Mr. Cott.
Can you explain if there's been any issues regarding the patio at all. In Mr. Poisson's statement, he says that there's been no issues at all. Can you confirm that?
Bram, can you come up to the podium, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bogart, we have not been informed of any direct issues. I do know, I have heard anecdotally concerns about staff running through traffic or moving through traffic, but we have not heard of any issues, no.
Councillor Clayliff?
Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Cotton. So could you just explain a little bit now, Mr. Poisson saying it's just for this year. I know that there's some issues when it comes to the AGCO, all those things. And, you know, I'm assuming that this is going to be a partnership, that they'll be working. Greg, I know, has said to me that he's more than willing to work with the city and try to set this up appropriately so that things go well this year with it. Is there anything else that we need to be aware of?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor, no, I believe that this is something, 1 year relief would be something that certainly I could support from a staff perspective. I do believe it should be limited to the same size as 2 parking stalls, which would be the equivalent to what every other business on the street would be. So square footage between the size of 2 parking stalls, I believe we should limit it to that, just from a fairness perspective, or to be in line with what other businesses are maxed out at. But no, we absolutely can work with Mr. Poisson on this for 1 year relief would be my preference at this point.
Councillor?
That sounds good to me, Mr. Cotton. I'm just thinking if it's at the 2 spots, that also leaves enough of the free space of the actual park so that people aren't particularly going to eat there. At least they can sit there and do different things. You know, they can have their picnic or look at the boats and that. But I do know that people enjoy it. I've sat there. It's fun to sit there and to eat and watch it. So, yeah, I think that this 1 year extension will be good, and then we can see where it goes from there. Especially if you and staff will be involved in helping and getting this all organized. I feel very confident in it. So, can I make a motion to change?
Certainly can.
So, Mrs. City Clerk.
Madam Clerk, do you want to help the councillor with the wording?
Sure. And you know me, I love the idea of you're going to make it look nice and the lights and everything. The nicer it looks, the better.
You want to read it? Yep, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor. Proposed motion for council consideration that a 1 year exemption to the pop-up patio policy be granted to Canal Side Restaurant. And are we going to excuse Canal Days from this?
That would be staff's preference, yes.
Yeah.
With the exception, excuse me, of Canal Days.
And Councillor, do you want to add that we can delegate dealing with this to Mr. Cotton?
I was going to say, yes, I'd like to turn it over to staff, to Mr. Cotton, to oversee what goes on, but I think that, you know, Canal Days should be excluded, but the rest of the time I think it would be great to have the...
Okay, thank you. Councillor Demery? Second it? Do you want to second it, Councillor Demery? Is that fine?
Yes, I will second it, but
Okay.
I also wanted to speak to the issue.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead, and then I've got Councillor Bruno. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, to the issue and to Mr. Poisson. To be fair, and Mr. Cotton, to be fair to those people who did reach out and call to complain the last time, I want to say that there were definitely issues, but I would say beyond a shadow of a doubt, there were probably 4 times more people in favor of it. It is really something that went over well, and I think it does a good service. So I'm very much in favor of it, but I just want to be sure, because I know my phone's going to ring if I didn't say that. So I want to make sure that everybody knows there were issues, but by far it was a favorite. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. One thing I'd like a clarification on, either from Bram or from Greg. So this 2 parking stall equivalent, was that the basis for what your space was last year?
Yep, go ahead.
Through the mayor to Councilor Bruno. No, it wasn't. I don't really know, to be honest. I haven't measured out 2 parking spots to do the comparison. The way I look at it is obviously the hill does have a little bit of a curvature to it. So what we did is we went around the trees. I find that's the best way to limit the space, is what we've done. We would ask that we continue to do that. Otherwise, we are putting spikes in the ground to do some proper rope around that. With it, and obviously with the way the hill is, there is probably an area probably 3 feet on either side that we never did use, because obviously we need to be on flat ground with it. So we do ask that we can keep the exact same as last year. I don't think it's much more, but when you take into consideration the curvature of the hillside there, I don't think it was much more than other places, because if you do account about the same amount of tables as what you would see on Breakwall's patio and the patio at the Pie Guys, table-wise.
Thank you. Councillor?
Yes. I mean, we're in a post-COVID world. I think we want to help businesses launch. I mean, because they've been through these bad years, they need a good year this year. So I am supportive. What I don't want to see is, to Councillor Demery's point, is calls coming in about, this is 4 feet 2 inches on one side, bigger than 2 parking stalls. I mean, we don't want, I don't think, get down into that level of minutia. And so my understanding is that we would be working on this as per last year. So I'm happy in that recommendation that was brought forward for Mr. Cotton to deal with that. But I think there should need to be some latitude, because there is some variables there with hills, trees. So I would ask that your best discretion be in that. And I certainly don't think that if there were any issues last year, it was because it might have been 2 feet longer on one side. There were other issues that caused that. So not to have a replay in 2 weeks, or the phone calls, if you could be looking into that to make sure it's fair. Thank you, Mr.
Okay, great, thank you. Further questions? You have any questions, Councillor Bodnar, online?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Maybe to Councillor Bruno's point, could we say 2 parking spaces of usable space? That'll make it then a bigger area, but still keep with the general thought of everybody else having 2 parking spaces.
Yep.
But I agree that there's a little leeway for the terrain would be okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Clayliff.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Cotton. Could I ask, I know that there's always tables been taken there, and I know Greg's been involved with getting things set up on there, but could we make sure that we have some tables where it's not roped off, where there's sitting area for other people to be able to sit and enjoy it? And I don't know I know people move the tables around. That gets to be a bit of a difficulty at times too, right? So if we could, but I just want to make sure that if people do come there with their kids, or they want to sit there, that they can sit outside of the roped area, especially if it's later in the evening, and have a place to sit as well. Is that possible? Can they be pegged in or something, Mr. Cron?
Of the CAO, I'll give you an answer on that.
Yeah, sure. Through your worship to Councillor Clayliff, I was going to say the same thing. Like that is actually handled by City Parks, the whole property. I think in the first and second year, we sort of shared the space 50-50. We did leave tables out on what was the city park and what was the non-serviced area. You could get ice cream and sit there yourselves. But it is true that people move tables here and there. I'll just make sure the parks crew, through Chris, through Director Kalamudu, is on point and make sure that the tables get put back, and that we cruise by from time to time and make sure everything's tip-top.
That was a complaint that I got, was
Yeah,
the people that wanted to sit there, they weren't going to the restaurant, but they wanted to sit in the park, and they do sometimes. And I think more so this year with the cruise ships coming. So
Yes.
I really think that we have to be prepared maybe we have a place along that we put tables even along the way, because I found even with minors, it was unbelievable, people that were sitting
Yeah.
out there and eating last year, because that's the only place you could go, and I'm sure that we're gonna have the same information.
Yeah, and I think the director, through the mayor, the director has plans to have staff look at benches, garbage cans, bike racks, and picnic tables. So we'll make sure that we have a suitable number. And we can't have too many, but we can't have too few kind of thing, right? So, thank you.
Okay. Further questions with regards to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried unanimously. Thank you, council. Thank you, Mr. Passan. Okay, item 12, the mayor's report. Got not a ton of items this evening, council. The City of Port Colborne, in consultation with Sierra Planning, has undertaken a study of the north-south roads that terminate at Lake Erie shoreline. These include Lorraine, Weaver, Pinecrest, Cedar Bay, Silver Bay, Wildwood, Pleasant Beach, Holloway Bay roads. The final report will be presented to council at a special virtual public meeting on Monday, May 16th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Due to the importance of the topic to council, staff, and our community, this meeting will be virtual to ensure council can hear from all delegates. To register as a delegate at the virtual public meeting or to submit a written delegation, email roadends@portcolborne.ca or call 905-835-2900, extension 115, or you can drop your written delegations to the attention of the Deputy Clerk at City Hall, 2nd floor, 66 Charlotte Street, by 12 noon on Friday, May the 13th. Each delegate will have 5 minutes to speak. The Port Colborne Fire and Emergency Services will be heading to homes in Port Colborne on Tuesday, May the 17th for Test It Tuesday. To ensure every Port Colborne home has a working smoke and carbon monoxide alarms, residents are encouraged to participate by testing their alarms. Firefighters will be visiting neighborhoods across Port Colborne, assisting residents with alarm testing and installing working alarms if the homes do not comply. These efforts are extending across the Niagara region as the 11 other municipalities of the Niagara chapter of Ontario Municipal Fire Prevention Officers Association will also be participating in Test It Tuesday. During the month of May, Port Colborne Fire and Emergency Services will also be installing battery-operated smoke and carbon monoxide alarms free of charge in all single-family dwellings while quantities last, and there are restrictions to that. Interested residents are to call 905-834-4512 to learn more and schedule an appointment. May is Museum Month, and Wednesday, May the 18th, 2022 marks International Museum Day. The Port Colborne Historical and Marine Museum has planned events for residents and visitors. Highlighting the power of museums, the museum is curating a build-your-own exhibit adventure as they collectively create a mini-exhibit that celebrates our local history. Tune into the museum's Instagram stories every Tuesday and Thursday to vote on which artifacts you would like to see displayed. The final exhibit will be unveiled on May the 18th from 12 to 5 at the Port Colborne Historical Marine Museum at 280 King Street. Something a little close to home for me, National Nurses Week is May the 9th to the 15th. The theme this year is #WeAnswerTheCall. And this was developed by the Canadian Nurses Association to showcase the many roles that nurses play in a patient's healthcare journey. The pandemic brought to light the courage and commitment that nurses work under every day and show the important role that nurses play in the community. My wife being an ICU nurse in Welland, I can understand what they've gone through, and I'm sure all of us around this table and in this room know that, especially you, Councillor Clayliff, as you were a nurse in your working life. So we do really appreciate our nurses, I'll tell you that. Couple items to announce. Main Street East will be paved. My colleague, Councillor Butters, and I worked over, we didn't work them over, but we worked hard with regards to Main Street East. The region wants to do a total rebuild of the area. It was going to take more time than suited the two of us, so we were able to get them to do a shave and pave, which will be starting in the summer. That contract is actually going out for bids at this time. So I don't have an exact date, but we were promised by this summer. So I think it's a long time coming because I think the third or fourth mayor that's asked for that. So, but Councillor Butters and I, we arm wrestled pretty good there. So thank you. Thanks, Councillor. And we were welcoming last week at a luncheon for the first week that our 41 students across parks, works, in City Hall, our marina, our beaches, all across the city. 41 great students. I was able to talk to most of them, and we've seen a number in City Hall and in a number of the departments, as well as over at the Public Works yard with Mr. Kalamoto. So please have a good thing to say about our students when you're out there. Encourage them and make sure that they're doing a good job, which I know they will, but we can always offer some good encouragement. And we have, as I said, we have great students that we've had for many, many years in this city. So that ends my report. Any questions? Okay, thank you. On to the Regional Council's report. Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's really good to, it's actually weirdly wonderful to be here for real. See all of you for real. This is just so nice. I want to just, if I can, correct the mayor just a little bit. As far as Main Street goes, I'm going to give the full credit to Mayor Steele, because as part of that Public Works, he had to do battle at Public Works. I'm not on Public Works. I got to chirp at him in other areas, but it was our mayor who really brought that one home. So let's give full credit to our mayor on that one. So I want to just let you know, today was the standing committee's meetings. This morning was Public Works, and this afternoon was Public Health. Tomorrow is Corporate Services in the morning, and Planning and Economic Development in the afternoon, and Council meets a week from Thursday, just so you all know. I would like to now do a little departure from the usual. On the weekend, a very important matter came up and to my attention, and I was invited to a meeting out on Mapleview Crescent at the home of Carlos Diaz. And it is in regards to some changes that Shirks and Shores, the resort, they've made it a rather large decision in terms of the access for the LOS 1RO Hamlet residents. And this goes back a long, long time. I think Councillor Bruno will probably remember these days rather well. In a little bit of history here, back in the, I'm going to say late 80s, early 90s, Shirkston Campground Park, which was to become a resort, met with the Ward 4, what was known as the Ward 4 Ratepayers Association folks, and they were the residents of the hamlet of Shirkston. And they came to an informal agreement with the then park person, I think it was Robert Seaton, to allow LOS 1RO residents access to the park, use of the beach, and some of the amenities. And this was an offering made back in the day because the hamlet folks really do experience a great deal of aggravation living beside the park. Back then it was a different kind of aggravation because it was kind of a wild place. But the reality is there are still huge traffic issues. There's the issues with noise. There's the issues with garbage and littering. And that's just to name a few. So if you can imagine the park back then, some 30-ish years ago, and how the park, now resort, has grown exponentially, those issues have also grown exponentially. So when you multiply that all out, really the goodwill of that informal agreement meant a lot to the hamlet residents. It was the resort's way of saying, you know what, we want to be a good neighbor. We acknowledge that you have a lot to put up with here. We want to do something good for you to kind of be that good neighbor and extend goodwill. And that was done on a handshake. The integrity of Mr. Seaton and the folks in that room was done on a handshake. And it lasted for a really long time. Now in 2018, the city came into an agreement with the resort to sell them the unopened road allowances of Empire Road and Michael Road. And part of that agreement also concerned the access, and it was the first time it was actually put into words to solidify the access of the hamlet residents to be able to access the beach. And now it would seem, unfortunately, that access, while it's not being eliminated, the way the resort is going about it essentially does. Because unless you're able-bodied enough to make the walk from where they want you to park to the beach, you're not going to get to the beach. You're not going to be able to do the walk if you're elderly. You're not going to be able to do the walk if you're a young mom with 2 little kids and you have a whole bunch of stuff to schlep to the beach. You're not going to be able to do that walk. You're not going to be able to do that walk if you are disabled. You're not going to be able to do it. So effectively, that's denying access. And so the residents meeting at Mr. Diaz's house, and there was over 60 people there in Carlos's backyard. It was quite impressive. And there was a lot of goodwill there too. They really want a solution that's reasonable and fair. So I come to you now to ask that this council give staff direction to come up with that, to help come up with that solution. It can include a legal advice or opinion. It can include discussion with former staff who negotiated that 2018 agreement. It could include negotiations with the resort and dialogue with the residents of the Shirkston Hamlet. And these are the things that we talked about on Saturday. These were their ideas. And I think they're good ideas. They make sense because what's happening to the Hamlet residents is certainly not a fair situation. Not at all. My hope is at tonight's meeting, Mr. Mayor and Council, one of you will get that ball rolling tonight to really avoid what could be very unpleasant and negative consequences. At the residents' request also, and this, I got an email from Marcia McCreadle today, and I want to let you know that she represents, that group picked representatives. She represents folks around the Wildwood area. Carlos Diaz is off Empire, Mapleview Crescent area, and Ingrid Copeland is from Pleasant Beach. And this is the email that Marcia sent to me, and this is like verbatim. We realize these legal issues and consultations and meetings take time. In the interim, we ask that Shirkston Shores Sun Retreat be requested to honor the agreement as they have all these years and continue our access as status quo until a legal clarification is determined and or renegotiation of a binding agreement is accomplished. So I want to also thank Scott Louie for coming on Saturday. The residents really appreciated the fact that the CAO of the City of Port Colborne showed up and was willing to answer all their questions and engage. That was so important, and I want to thank you for being there. I want to thank the ward councillors for their attention to this matter because they've been fielding lots of emails. I've been getting emails. I've been getting phone calls, and I really need to now leave this in your capable hands to stand with those residents of the hamlet of Shirkston. I know I do, and I hope you will too. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, please note, it is it's in our rules. You're not supposed to clap. So sorry. Yeah, that's okay. But Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to declare a conflict of interest as I have all during when this was negotiated with the resort, and I won't participate in anything that goes on about this tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Walz?
Thank you, Your Worship. One other thing I'd like to bring up in regards to this, in regards to the current agreement, is that the current agreement, the wording in the current agreement, only allows 2 roads to be used for access to the beach. One of the roads, you can't get access from the main gateway, so it prohibits you from using that road. The other road that you can gain access from the main gateway doesn't take you to the beach. So the agreement in itself and the way it's written has some other flaws in there that I think were beyond the intent of the original agreement. So I think those should be looked at as well as the access being limited to pedestrian traffic as well. So I would be glad to put forward a motion.
Okay. Do you have a wording yet, or do you want to have everybody speak? Then I'll come back to you, Councillor.
Yes, come
That's
back
okay.
to me.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. Councillor Borgard.
Through your worship, similar to Councillor Bodner, I will also have to declare a conflict as I'm employed by Upper Canada Consultants and Shores and Shores is a client of the firm.
Okay, great, thank you. Further questions or comments by council? I'm going to go to the CAO. Oh, sorry, I'm going to go to Councillor Bruno, then the CAO.
Thank you. This may be the first time in my lifetime that Shores and Shores was mentioned in here that I didn't have a conflict of interest. But I think it was very well capitalized by Councillor Butters. I do think because and I'm glad that she offered options and the folks in attendance offered options. My concern, like a lot of other things, where the city has already entered into an agreement, into a legally binding document, I think the foundation of how to take this forward is, and I don't know, Mr. Louis was there at the time of drafting that, but I think we need at least to have the document for which we signed as a city to be reviewed by legal counsel to see where we stand, so that when we enter that negotiation, those who are representing the city are armed with a review of the document that's already in place and have a strategy or an insight into where there might be an opportunity that the motion could be on solid ground, or it needs to be hopefully a negotiated settlement rather than courtrooms and lawyers and legal costs. So I guess I would say that needs to be, in my view, the first step that I would recommend before we jump into a negotiation that we probably will want to say we can't really negotiate until we get some advice from our legal counsel. So I don't know if Mr. Louis wanted to add anything or anybody else.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. If we could have the CAO just give us an overview, since he was at the meeting and knows with the details of how this agreement came about.
Sure, through your worship to council, I don't know that there's very much left for me to say after Councillor Bruno, because that's what I was going to stand up and say. And so I appreciate Councillor Butters, Regional Councillor Butters' kind words. I don't know if everybody was happy I was there. Some people, maybe a few. But I think that is the best way to proceed sort of on our side. And, you know, some of the folks there had some good ideas on how they could proceed through private channels. But I think the municipal channel or the city channel is probably to get a legal opinion on the first agreement, the first formal agreement that I know of, 2018, and what exactly it includes. And if it includes that continued golf cart motorized access, and then the enforceability of that, I can bring that legal opinion back to council. It might be in closed session. Everything eventually does come to open session unless it's an HR matter or something else. So the good folks who are here and watching on YouTube will see it eventually, but that's a chance for council to hear the lawyer's opinion without Shirkston or the park owners hearing the lawyer's opinion, because we want to protect our interests. So unfortunately, some people will have to wait to see that. At that time, I think council can, I mean, maybe it's good news, maybe it's bad news, maybe it's somewhere in the middle. Maybe the next step is a phone call that says, hey, you guys are wrong here. Maybe the next step is court action. Maybe the next step is sitting across the table and negotiating something. But I think the first step, if Councillor Wells's motion for staff direction, and I aim this at the clerk more so than at the councillor, is that staff be directed to obtain a legal interpretation on the initial intent of the 2018 agreement. And I can also talk to some of the folks who worked on that agreement, specifically Cecil Vincent, who was here at the time as manager of special projects, and and some past staff and past council members. So that might be our first step. And of course, the good folks who are affected by this can probably go through the channels they already want to go through. I know we talked about some of that on Saturday. And maybe between both efforts, we can have a multi-pronged approach here that gets us where we want, where the residents that we represent want us to end up.
Great, thank you. Councillor Demery?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I would actually like to see this not be bandied back and forth, coming to council for little parts and then going back and coming back again. I'd like to see us get the legal opinion, have staff engage the legal channels, have staff come to some kind of a place where they have a solution and figure it out. At that point, either come to council at that point or speak to the residents first and then come to council. But just so that it comes to a point where we're not trying to improve every little step along the way and where we can get something that works for people as a package rather than as a piece. And hopefully that should work out well, and it should speed the process up a little bit. So I'd like to see us do it that way. I think it's a lot simpler and straightforward, and we don't need to get involved in every little step. We need to be looking at the approval of something that's been really settled with the residents.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Wells, do you have a motion?
I think so.
Okay. Can we all stand when we speak tonight, please? Thanks. Appreciate it.
Sorry. Yes. I would like to, my motion is that staff be directed to obtain legal advice and interpretation of the 2018 agreement and provide a legal position with regards to that. And that staff contact former and current municipal representatives that were involved in establishing that agreement to provide input and historical perspectives on the agreement for the intent. I would also then would ask that the city approach Cirques and Soares Resort and request that entrance to the park be allowed as it has in the past until the matter is resolved.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Danch. Questions on the motion? Councillor Danch.
I got no problem. I have no problems with what you're saying, but it all comes down to ownership. And those guys own the park. And I can remember, I was around in 2018, and I can remember that. I thought, what a great thing for that park to let those residents in. And I think you guys should have the rights because you're putting up with the traffic and all the other stuff that Barb was talking about. But I think the whole thing's going to come down to ownership. And I hope it works out for you. I really do.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. Further questions on the motion? We do have two conflicts of interest. Councillor Beauregard, who's in council, and on Zoom is Councillor Bodner. Those are duly noted by the clerk. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor, please raise your hand. So that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Got any more report, Barb? No. You're done?
No, I put up your sign.
Great. Are there any questions to the Regional Council this evening? Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Well, or probably because you relinquished that the mayor did all that work on that project, I thought, I might as well backfill for you. But tonight, we're lifting 9.5 and 9.6 and its regional issues as opposed to what they've been doing surrounding water and then surrounding wastewater. So I know, I'm sure Mr. Kalamoto will be speaking to that, maybe the mayor, but in reading that, just a pretext to when it's lifted, is that it seems that we are a city amongst all others that has some serious water and wastewater problems, and that's not news. But I think, in the way we do roads, which is sort of worse first, I'd like to see the region focus on Port Colborne, and there are numbers and studies in those two reports that say other places were looked at, and we weren't in one, and on one of the charts, and in another that, there's significant infrastructure here that is region, and we're doing full out everything we can to do our side of the bargain. And I think it's going to need some pressure and some cajoling to get our fair share. And I'd arguably say, although it's selfish being a Port Colborne councillor, we've got the biggest problem we need to get addressed first. And that's the way it should be in all fairness. So just wanted to give you an update on what's coming. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And again, both Councillor Butters and I were working at this at the council level, where I, along with Mayor Redicott from Fort Erie, and then I worked the Public Works, because neither of those two are on Public Works. So those will be coming up later. So that's it for the regional councillor. Okay. Staff remarks. Anybody online have, nobody's online. Staff here? Nothing? You have anything?
Thank you.
Staff out there? Nothing? Okay. Nothing for staff? Okay. Councillors' remarks. I'll start with Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You took care of the one complaint that I had on speeding on Empire Road. And it looks like the regional police are going to patrol that more vigorously in the next few weeks, kind of send a message to people that are coming into Shirks and Shores that they better mind the speed limits. So thank you for doing that, and that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Don't give away our secrets. But yes, they will be, believe me. And thank you for bringing that to the NRP's attention. Councillor Borgard, anything this evening?
I have no remarks this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Clayliff?
I have nothing. Everything I needed, I dealt with prior to, and everyth's been settled.
Thank you.
Great,
Councillor
thank you.
Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have one issue to speak about, and it's something that I have brought to this council before, but it has to do with speeding, so hopefully while the police are out there taking care of what's happening at Ward 4, they could share a little bit with that with Ward 2. We have a lot of people, and I do mean a lot of people, who come south off of Main Street onto Wellington that are treating it like a little speedway. And, you know, there are no stop signs. It's a nice clear road. You know what happens. Mm-hmm. So, and clearly they're local people, but they're endangering their neighbors' children. So we do need to look at this again and see if we can't bring more attention to that.
I'll speak to the staff sergeant regards that. Actually, there's an acting staff sergeant. Our staff sergeant's off right now. Yeah. So I'll bring that to the acting staff sergeant's attention. I'll send him an email in the morning.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Great.
That's everything I had.
Thank you. Councillor Danch?
I'll leave you alone tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Bruno?
Two quick things. I want to thank you and want to question. Just on the thank you, anybody who hasn't been down to the marina yet, need to take a drive down Marina Drive and just see the cleanup changes and improvements that are already there. I mean, we talked last meeting about $750,000 being spent. Most of that's underground and things you don't really notice, but you will notice a big change. So kudos to Blair and his staff. And the first day I ended up stopping in was the day a van load of students departed and went right at it down there at the flower beds and everything else, and some of the painting and all that. So that's going really good. So just a thank you to them, the staff, and Public Works was involved. But I think it's really starting off with a bang. It should go down there and have a look. So thank you on that. And my question is through you to Mr. Kawamoto, and perhaps the mayor shares in this one. Last year we talked about, and it's actually out front of the operations center there, that traffic island and things that the region actually cut. And at the time there was a talk about sitting down with the region and going over these areas that, they're mobilizing to bring a tractor and a trailer to that island, and we could drive across the road with the mower and cut it and maintain it at the same level we do Lock 8 Park and the part of the trail there that's in front of the fire hall. And so I'm just wondering if there was any results of that. And I did notice today, so that island is not cut and quite long, and everything around it, of course, that is ours, is cut. So I don't know if you can comment on, did any of those negotiations happen?
Through the mayor to the councillor, we have started on some of the negotiations. Manager Zapowski is here to discuss. We actually started with regard to some snow clearing on some Main Street, and some of those discussions that the mayor, the CAO, and I have had with the regional CAO are progressing, but at the manager level. So we have not got to grass cutting as of yet, but we are working towards that. We have been discussing roads and sidewalks, particularly on Main Street. So I will consider that direction to continue the growth and scope of those discussions.
Thank you. Great. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Kawamoto. Councillor Walls?
Everything I had has already been discussed.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Sure. Yep. Mr. CAO?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to council, I did decline to speak, but because I didn't have anything, but I just wanted to sort of take this opportunity to point out how fast we went through councillor inquiries, probably a new record. When I first started working here a bunch of years ago, we had a lot of tree needs trimming, pothole needs replacing, garbage can needs emptying, and I want to just say that I appreciate council going through customer service. The public who watches YouTube, and tell your friends if they don't watch YouTube, customer service, we live. It was a priority of this council at the start of the term. You do hear a recording for a second before when it first rings, but a live answer on every phone call to 835-2900 in between office hours. And we will get your pothole filled or your garbage changed or your was another one, tree trimmed. The fact is, there's an after hours number too. I saw some chatter on Facebook. Some people were frustrated because garbage cans were full. Now we do have, as Chris just mentioned, as the mayor just mentioned, a summer crew and summer students who start, I think it was Councillor Bruno who mentioned it, summer students who start the first weekend of May. The last weekend of April, there's no one here on Saturday and Sunday, and sometimes the garbage is filled up. But telling your friends on Facebook doesn't help us find out. We have an on-call foreman. If we make the call, we can send someone out to clean those garbages or potholes or trees or so on. So I appreciate that, folks. Keep using customer service. We will respond to every service request that we get. And it's a better place than waiting until the council meeting. So I appreciate council going through those items so quickly.
Councillor Bruno.
Thank you. I forgot to mention this, and it only happened tonight. No, it's not that. You made mention in your council reports about the public meetings coming up and the delegations, particularly the road ends. And I wanted to bring forward something that caught my eye from Committee of Adjustment, and that is, like, we had a number of residents here this evening, and I don't know if we have a policy now. I guess the shortest way of saying this is, the public was here tonight, and yet for a public meeting, they're not going to be here. And so I'm wondering if we could just, not for tonight, if the clerk could come back with, how are we going to handle public meetings on those off weeks where the public can come and the delegation? And perhaps it's a capacity issue, and first come, first serve, but some sort of rule that says, well, how come we could invite everybody to a council meeting but not a public meeting on my favorite issue? So I just wanted to bring it up, and maybe the clerk can advise that she'd bring something forward. Thank you.
Yeah, it is a capacity issue, Councillor, and I think why staff did the public meeting was the fact that, if 100 people wanted to speak, you can't have that here. Yeah. So to be fair to the public, is you can zoom in, and it's just like being here. So whether you stand at the podium or you zoom in, it's pretty similar. So at least they all get their 5 minutes to speak. We did this with a public meeting at the region, Barb, 2 weeks ago on the planning issue. We had, I think, 56 planned, but only 30 some odd spoke, I think. 32 speakers. Yeah, that spoke, yeah. And it worked very well. And they were able to be brought in, they spoke, and then questions if there was any in out. But it allowed everybody to speak, because even the region has, the same as us, it's a capacity issue with regards to still the COVID rules, so, our COVID rules.
So will the clerk be coming back? Because I'd like to see kind of capacity, but a hybrid model, that some people can come, but, you know, maybe it's a people delegate, maybe it's some here, some home, limited amount. I mean, I don't think we did that tonight, but, you know, there's a number, and let's work with that.
I'll start with the CAO.
Sure, through your worship to Councillor Bruno, I appreciate I don't appreciate the question because I was hoping that it would go by without being mentioned. I think mistakes were made tonight, and I'll be honest with council. I blame myself. I was in my office taking care of a personal matter right up until the meeting started, whereas last week I was out here kind of field marshalling the gathering of the people. So I apologize for what happened, but we were over capacity in both of these rooms, and I'm already speaking to staff over email during the meeting about what we're going to do about that. We do have an emergency control group meeting tomorrow, where I think we can talk about this and talk about what the next steps are. So I wouldn't judge the next type of public meeting by what you saw tonight, because mistakes were made tonight. I don't think we need security guards in here and I don't want to create two classes of citizens, ones who got in and ones who didn't get in, or ones who get to speak in person and ones who have to speak remotely. But something has to, what happened today can't happen. I got a staff member back in there, a room with capacity of 15, and she's around 20 people, and that's not fair to my staff member. I think some members of the public abused our hospitality today. There's signs on these rooms, there's a sign on the door about being 6 feet apart, and I appreciate that there were important issues discussed, but something has to be done differently at the next meeting. And if it's okay with council, I will talk to the emergency control group tomorrow, and we'll see if we can put some controls in place. I think the idea for the road allowance meeting, because we know it's a hot topic issue, and it's important to a lot of people. We want to have equity and fairness, and I think the remote delegates, 5 minutes per person, limited number of questions, if any, from council to the speakers is the best way to make sure that we have equity from the first speaker to the 99th speaker. I don't want to create two classes of speakers. So I would just say stand by. I will ask the clerk to come to the meeting tomorrow. I already have asked her to come to the meeting tomorrow and talk about how we can make sure that we don't repeat what happened tonight. And again, I apologize to council.
Good, thank you. You all right, Councillor?
Yep, thank you for your candor on that. Appreciate it.
Good, thanks. Okay, we're on to the pulled items. First item is just find it here. Is the sorry, it's okay. Oh, it's Scott. You're okay. Item 8.1 is 2021 year in review, Public Works Department. The recommendation is that Public Works Department Report 2022-93 be received. I'll have Councillor Bruno and Danch put that on the floor, and we'll call on staff at this time to give their presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will endeavor to be shorter than the CIO of the last presentation. However, everybody knows that both myself and my staff do talk quite a lot, but we will try to get through this. So with that caveat, I would invite everyone in chambers and watching from home to just review if I go through this too quickly, because there is too much to fit within a 24-hour period. So I will only be here till midnight. Thank you. So we'll start off with us, Public Works. Next slide, please. Our mission and vision, this is based off of Council's strategic plan, as you can see on the last line. However, we have created our own within our department that specifically focuses on what Public Works does. Next slide. The first area that I'm going to be leading, because we do not yet have a manager in place, is engineering services. There are 3 different areas within the engineering services, and as you can see on the screen. Next slide. And I included some pretty pictures of what Development and Assets does for their particular area, just for some visionary accompaniments. Next slide, please. So, what do we do? What does this specific area do? Which again is only 1/3 of the department. Speed radar signs, mapping, municipal consents, which is a big one and increasing. Street light repairs, as you can see, there were quite a bit. Site plan and subdivision, as we grow and as Manager Long does his job and brings more and more people to this city, we will take a look at municipal consent, site plans, and subdivision, and lot grading, which is the next one, just growing over and over. Pre-consultation applications, which we will actually be revising in the new year with our new manager of planning, and committee of adjustment applications reviewed. Next slide, please. Moving forward, some main initiatives that we are looking to do is online asset mapping, also some permitting software, which will hopefully speed up the application process, engineering design standards, which we hope to communicate with those developers and speed up that process. Traffic is always a big thing. I think it was mentioned 2, maybe 3 times here at council tonight, and obviously overall streamlining the development review. Next slide, please. Thank you. Capital budgets. Before I get into this, I just want to note that with 2021, Public Works was 0.33%, or just under $19,000 over budget. When you say $19,000, that's over $5.726 million. So we were pretty much bang on, and I believe the treasurer has given me a pass to say we're pretty much on budget. Now, this year, Public Works has $20.9 million. That is a record for this city. It is the largest capital budgets and projects that the city has seen. 102 of those, out of the 154, I believe, are for Public Works. Next slide, please. Now we'll get into the capital review. Again, I'm going to be going warp speed because I did try to be shorter than the CAO. So resurfacing, it is out right now. You'll see patching next. Then our roads will be better and better. And we have Highway 3 being done by the region. So looking good. Annual sidewalk repair, that is a legislated issue that we actually have to take a look at and repair on a yearly basis. Clarence Street was the big sidewalk construction that we did. Multi-use trails, which you see this particular picture of. Next slide, please. Bulk water station construction, marina shoreline protection, we help out all of the different departments, and Steel Street rail crossing, which we worked with another partner of ours, Geo Rail. Next slide, please. This is our annual road resurfacing program. As you can see, again, almost right on budget, $3,000 difference, and a lot of different roads being done, 16 in total. Next slide, please. This showing kind of a before and after picture. Look at that beautiful blacktop. I get excited. Maybe nobody else does, but that's some good money being spent to help our residents with our roads. Next slide, please. Another thing that I mentioned, multi-use trail repairs. There are 4 of them on that slide. We're going to keep going. Next slide, please. And some pictures of those. Again, loving pictures. Shows how beautiful that Public Works staff are replacing and putting in new infrastructure. Next slide, please. Here is, again, Steel Street, which we worked with our partner at Geo Rail for. Again, coming in under budget once more with that crossing. Next slide, please. This one, again, asphalt patching contract, which we will be starting in the next few months, but we do have paving. Next slide, please. annual sidewalk repair. This is a picture of our new sidewalk on Clarence Street that was put in. We have heard nothing but good things about it. Staff did most of that in-house and then hired the contractor to do that area. I know we also have some staff sitting in this chamber who also uses that on a daily basis. Next slide, please. One other thing we're doing is selling some of our water with our Elm Street bulk water station. I'm not sure if the manager of water wastewater is going to get to that, but again, another under budget project. Looking good that we can help the residents who not necessarily have domestic water. They can fill their pools, hot tubs, etc., probably using a contractor that goes to this station. Next slide, please. Again, being in Port Colborne, our marina and shoreline is one of the most important things that we have. It is a jewel to our city, and we have done some work. Maybe, again, the manager of roads and parks will be leading to this, but this is another work we did to ensure that as some of our assets have some degradation, that we go in and prop it up. Next slide, please. So into the future, 2022 and on, we have a lot of projects going on, as mentioned. Again, some of the larger ones, Erie Street project, our road resurfacing that is now over $1 million. Some roadside ditching program, crack sealing, and we've had that particular project on Chippewa and Dolphin at the intersection design, and another one that came to council, which is Friendship Trail Crossings, which we're going to be going underway. Now again, some projects obviously need to be designed before they actually go into construction, and Neff Street Outlet Rehab, our INS and asset management study, which are a big one and going to be looking at the future of the city in the next 5, 10, 25 years and see what we need and how we need to replace our assets, or as we grow, to replace them with larger assets. Again, cruise ship terminal, which was mentioned today also. Another big one that we're working with economic development on. Next slide, please. So here is Erie Street. It is one of the big ones, $1.8 million. It is one of the larger projects that we're doing in the next few years, or that we have done in the past few years, I should say. Next slide, please. Maria Fuel Pad construction. Again, looking pretty. And as the councilor mentioned, I think the marina is something that people should be walking around and taking a look, because we are putting it up. Next slide, please. And road resurfacing contract. The road resurfacing itself is actually going on last week and this week and finishing up next week. So again, I'm going to have more prettier pictures, more black asphalt coming in, looking at our good roads next year. Next slide, please. Okay, and as we move forward in the year, there are still a number of contracts, as mentioned before, that we're going to be moving forward with in the summer. So again, we never stop. Next slide, please. And some that we've already come to council, and now these projects are coming to fruition physically. Both Chippewa, Dolphin Berkeley intersections, and Friendship Trail crossings, specifically, again, getting ready for the Canada Games. Next slide, please. Okay. Again, as mentioned, the INS study and asset management plans, they are the plans that we are going to be bringing to council with not just those plans, but then a 5-year capital plan that includes all water, wastewater, stormwater, and roads put together, laid on, and coming up with a linear capital 5-year plan to move forward with. As mentioned before, cruise ship, again, working with economic development. This is another opportunity with regard to the servicing, and we do have some funding that the manager of water and wastewater will get into later. Recreational trail, and as noted before, outlets. Again, the third, next one, please. The third area is facility maintenance. Again, a very busy area. Next slide, please. Here are some of the accomplishments. Again, taking a look around, that picture looks very different than it did a year ago as we took down the old operations center. Roof replacements, as was discussed last meeting, are well on its way, and other facility renovations. Next slide, please. Going into this year, we do have the elevator that we have, we're ready to tender. Some HVAC that we are getting funding from a third party for. Looking at City Hall here, EV charging stations going green, and some of the other electrical upgrade projects. With that, I think I've taken care of 1/3 of public works in 3 different areas, and I'm going to now turn it over to the manager of Roads and Parks.
Thanks, Chris. Good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Shapowski. I'm the manager of Road and Park Operations, and our division consists of 3 different entities, one being our Roads division, one being Parks, and the other Fleet and Stores. You can go to the next slide. So our Roads team conducts operational works on all visual assets within the right-of-way, which would include roads, curbs, boulevards, sidewalks, trees, signage, and and we could go to the next slide. So here you can see some of the services we provide on an annual basis, including our ditching, shouldering, street sweeping, sidewalk cleaning, road grading, and mowing programs. You also see that just under 200 forestry-related work orders were actually brought in 2021, which would include tree removals, tree trimming, or even stump grinding. Also, we have a few other services such as asphalt patching, sod repair, guide rail repair, line painting, traffic signs, and sign maintenance. You can go to the next one. So here's some of our 2022 initiatives that we're working on now or in the very near future. The first one's the service club signs, which are going to be installed on Highway 58 and Highway 140 this year. We also have a fence installation on Rosemount at the north limit, which just recently was completed. Our annual programs have started for, as we mentioned on the previous slides, there's been a lot started and a lot to begin during the summer. And this year we are working with other municipalities and the region to streamline different services. You might have noticed that there was the city was actually doing street sweeping out on Main Street last month, and that's part of our collaborative efforts to work better and streamline services. And like Councilor Bruno mentioned earlier, grass cutting is on there too, so that will be something that we discuss, and we'll be making a phone call this week. Next one, our events are back, so we're busy preparing for events. We're planning, and we'll be taking care of different entities such as closing the roadways, putting up signage, and aiding all of those events. We're also reviewing our winter control plans, and we're anticipating any anticipated changes will be happening before the next winter control period. And one of the most exciting ones is creating videos to really present to the public what we do and why we do it. So we started our first video last year with our downtown clearing operation, and it was very successful. We're planning to do many more throughout this year and the future. And we can go to the next slide. So now we have our parks team, which actually does a lot more than just parks. They maintain the city's trail systems, cemeteries, facility grounds, beaches, on all of the sports fields as well. Go to the next slide. So here you can see a number of programs that our parks team completes on an annual basis. I'm sure most of you have noticed that we started replacing the outfield fence and lighting at Lions Field, and completion for that's planned by before the beginning of baseball season this year. As mentioned, we do more than just parks, so I'd like to highlight a couple. We do the hanging baskets out on the main streets. We do municipal waste collection, cemetery interments, maintenance and improvements there. We also do the sports field maintenance and maintenance on our public washrooms as well. You can go to the next slide. Here's some of our 2022 initiatives for parks. You can see at the bottom there, we actually did our first tree giveaway, which was very successful. There was approximately 300 trees that were given away. We have also applied for a grant for Lions Field to do some aesthetic upgrades around the exterior, which it would include new fencing and tree lining. We're also working to improve our commemorative program policies. Last year, we ended up GPSing all of our assets within all of our areas. We have them in GIS right now, so now we can make some decisions as to how many more we actually want to have in each piece of land. And another one that council will be seeing shortly is we'll be bringing a report on the topic of becoming a bee city. So there'll be more to come to council about based on that. We're also going to be doing a solar lighting trial, so we will be installing a solar light within Sunset Park to do a trial area there on that area. We're installing earth bins as were improved in the 2022 capital budget. With Lockgate Park, we've already gathered internal comments regarding some of the capital projects that were approved in the 2022 budget, and now we're going to be working to actually design the park and put them in the appropriate locations to accommodate future works. And similar to our roads team, Parks is also going to be completing educational videos to update the public as to what we do and why we do it. Now on to fleet and stores. So this team maintains the city's fleet and equipment throughout the entire corporation, and they also stock and distribute materials throughout the corporation as well. So we've had some of our biggest changes here. We actually have a new fleet supervisor, which was hired in August last year, and since then we've also replaced our mechanics as well. Or hired our mechanics. So we've also done fleet condition ratings for all of the fleet vehicles, and we've also moved to a new vehicle logistics provider, which opens some new doors for our fleet and what we can do and how we can report on our fleet. Our supervisor also arranged snowplow operator training and defensive driver training for all of our public works staff at the beginning of the snowplowing season, which we will do on an annual basis moving forward. And as you can imagine, with COVID, we had significant amounts of masks and disinfectant distributed throughout the corporation through our store staff. Over to the right, you can see some pictures of some assets that we have. So at the top, we have a forklift, which was previously on a rental contract and was purchased within the annual operating budget instead of continuing to rent after year. In the middle, you'll see an articulated multi-use tractor, which was purchased through a recommendation to council in 2021. And at the bottom right, you'll see a Municipal Drain Team's excavator, which was also purchased through a recommendation to council. Then to the left, you'll see our purchase list for 2022. Some of these either have already been purchased or in the process of being purchased or plan to be procured later this year. In terms of our fleet replacement plan, we completed our inventory and condition assessment that are we're currently creating an assessment tool to justify pieces of equipment end of life. Right now we have one or two more groups to conduct interviews on to determine what the future vehicles and equipment needs are for them, to be able to apply that to our current fleet replacement plan. We're also currently investigating software specific to fleet maintenance and reporting. And with our new vehicle logistics provider, we're actually able to integrate a public-facing website that can show vehicle locations. So one aspect we're looking to complete is to have our snowplow vehicles actually display when roads are completed or when their time frame is until they're completed. So that's something we can actually show to the residents. And finally, we're excited to start looking at electric vehicles, and especially with a lot of manufacturers coming out with new electric trucks nowadays, or in the next couple of years, we're excited to do that research and then start planning for the future on electric. And that's it. So I'll pass it over to Darlene, and thank you for your time.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm very happy to be here to talk about the Water Wastewater Department. Similar to engineering and roads and parks, we also have three departments in water wastewater. We have Municipal Drains, Environmental Compliance, and Water Wastewater, who are all fully staffed now, which is amazing. Next slide, please. So in the Municipal Drains area, you can see we have a picture of the Younghop-Wagner drain in the top here, which we completed some maintenance on in 2021, construction, and some pictures of that beautiful excavator that Steve's department helped us procure, putting it hard at work. We received it in November of last year, and you can see from the pictures we got it very muddy very quickly. And then the bottom left photo is a photo of our drainage technician on site with a consultant doing some survey work on one of the drains. Next slide, please. So I have a list of achievements here, but the ones I wanted to highlight were the fact that we do have a new drainage technician who just joined us in January of last year. Our new excavator, the big news, not just that we get it dirty, but that we are actually being able to do drain work much more cost effectively and more efficiently. The cost of our excavator per hour compared to a rental is about 55% of the cost. So all of our municipal drains that we're now able to construct and maintain are being done much more efficiently and cost effectively in-house. We can do almost all of the construction work ourselves instead of contracting it out. So we have more control over the schedule. We don't have to worry about scheduling, going to work around other people's schedules. We get to do it and plan it ourselves. We did a bunch of maintenance on drains, and we also completed the Missioner Drain Report. The council did approve that report last year, but it did go through the drainage process to tribunal, so we cannot do any construction on that drain until the Wignall and Port Colborne drain reports are complete. So we're hoping to have those reports to council by the end of 2022, and hopefully be able to get into construction sometime in 2023. Next slide, please. Initiatives for 2022, we are transitioning the outlet gate structure responsibility from the Roads and Parks Department to the Water Wastewater Department. Before we did the reorganization, Municipal Drains was under engineering. With it now being under water wastewater, it makes sense to have all that responsibility transitioned to the water wastewater staff. So we're in the process of working through that now. We're still going to have the support of the road staff, and we're going to take it over and take one thing off of their plate. We have 8 reports that are in progress. The Biederman Drain Report is the next report that we anticipate to be completed. We're hoping to have it before council in the next couple of months, and provided it makes its way through the process, we could start construction on the Biederman Drain as early as later as this year. So that involves Biederman Drain is Wainfleet and Port Colborne, so we have residents in both municipalities that have an opportunity to make comments on that drain. Well, the other thing we're working on is creating an annual maintenance plan for all of our municipal drains. Our goal is to have a plan that we can have on our website, so all residents that are in a drain can see when maintenance is next planned for their drain. So we're working on that plan now, and we're hoping to have that rolled out by the end of the year as well. Next slide, please. So the next department is environmental compliance, and again, lots of different departments in there. We have compliance, we have climate change, and water meters and locates in that department. Next slide, please. Again, a long list of highlights here, but just a long list of achievements, but just to highlight a few key ones. One thing is there's all new staff in this department. We have a new compliance supervisor who joined us last May. We have a new climate change coordinator, which was a position created by council in 2021, so that position was filled in August, and our utilities technician joined us in November when the current technician moved over to a water wastewater department as an operator. So all new staff in that department. We did achieve a 100% rating on the ministry's drinking water inspection in 2021. While that is mostly water wastewater operators that have a role in that, the compliance department makes sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So when the ministry shows up, everything is where it needs to be. We did do over 1,400 locates in 2021. So 2020, because of COVID, locates, there was a little less excavating going on. So we are now back to pre-pandemic levels with excavations in Port Colborne. So, which is good. That means we have people doing projects and digging and needing locates. We did over 450 final reads in 2021, so that means over 450 properties changed hands in 2021. And with the new, as everyone knows, real estate market's been hot, so there's been a lot of changes and a lot of final reads that have to be done to change the meter account to the next customer. We also completed energy audits at the Valley Health and Wellness Center and at the Fire Hall with the assistance of our summer students and our summer student intern. Next slide, please. For 2022, one of the big initiatives that we've actually started down the path is our Consolidated Linear Infrastructure Environmental Compliance Approvals. CLIECAs for short is for our stormwater system and our wastewater system. We are required by the province to apply for these by the end of January of this year. Basically, what the ministry is doing is making the approval process for stormwater and wastewater the same as it is for drinking water, which means that when a developer wants to put in a new development with stormwater and sanitary, or if we want to replace our stormwater pipes or our sanitary pipes, we don't need to go to the ministry and pay $1,000 for every application and then wait 6 to 8 weeks plus for approvals. It means that as long as the developers and our own design meet certain criteria from the ministry, we can approve that in-house, just like we've been doing for drinking water since 2010. It gives us the control over our system. There will be potentially budgetary impacts because we have, like most municipalities, never had to do anything with our pipes in the ground. We've never had to do any monitoring. We haven't had to do any sampling. It's just the ministry is like, yeah, we've kind of realized what's going on. So I did talk to the ministry a couple of weeks ago and said, so are we going to get it soon? So I should have it by the time next budget comes around. So I'll know then if there's going to be any impacts on us at that point. As Chris mentioned, facilities, they are working on EV chargers, and I believe the funding application just opened up this week, and our climate change coordinator and the facility supervisor are working on grant applications right now, looking for 50 cents dollars, so we can get hopefully 2 chargers installed this year. We have reaccreditation of the drinking water quality management system coming up this year. It's a requirement every 3 years to be reaccredited, and this is our environmental compliance supervisor's first audit, and I'm sure she will do wonderful. And we're also updating our energy conservation and demand management plan. The current plan is in place until 2024, but it doesn't have really detailed energy reduction plans, like specific projects. So our climate change coordinator has been working with the Treasury Department and with facilities to come up with a more concrete plan with more specific objectives in it. So that should be hopefully going out in RFP soon. Next slide, please. So the water wastewater folks make up actually the largest part of our department. They look after stormwater, which is the stormwater management pond at Johnson Street in the top picture. They look after water main breaks, which an example of one is on the right-hand side. And then, of course, they do maintenance in the system like flushing hydrants and looking at sewer laterals, which are the other 2 pictures in the slide. Next slide, please. So again, 2021 achievements, we are fully staffed in the water wastewater department, but we have 5 new ones. We have a new supervisor, a new crew leader, which was an internal staff member that is now a crew leader. We have a new fully licensed operator and 2 new operators in training. And I have to say, I know everyone hates hearing about COVID, but with our staff, with COVID, we wanted to make sure in the event of one of them became infected or we had it spreading through the department or they had to be isolated, that we had staff available to ensure the safe drinking water and the sewage kept flowing in Port Colborne. So I know I've said before, but our staff, we had 4 staff going up until October on any given day. So out of the 8 operators, we only had 4 in at any given time. So the fact that they accomplished what they did in 2021 with only 4 staff in every day was phenomenal. They are back together, separate rooms. We still have them separated, but they are back on the same shift. So we do have them all back in, 8 people a day. So some of the things they did accomplish in 2021 is we had the lowest total water purchases ever. I have records going back to 1993. We only purchased 2.3 million cubic meters of water from the region this year. Our water loss, or our unbilled water, went from 48% in 2017 and was down to 31% in 2021. That's a 17% reduction in 4 years. And that's based on the efforts of our staff, getting out there, getting on those water main breaks quickly, being very diligent about the water they're using when they're doing maintenance on the system. They've really, really been careful. We're not going to rest on our laurels. We want to get that number lower because we know 31% is still a little higher than normal. But, you know, they're out there, they're very conscious of it, and they know they want to get that number down as well. Our wastewater flows were also the lowest in 4 years. Unfortunately, we can't take credit for that. That's Mother Nature. The lake was the lowest it's been since 2018. Rainfall was lower than it was in 2019. Mother Nature did us a real favor. We are, as you'll see, I have a report later this evening talking about inflow and infiltration. We do have a lot of lot of things that we're going to be doing this year and in the future to get that number down as well, so that we can take credit. Hopefully next year I'll be able to come up here and say, we got it down and we are the reason why it went down. It won't just be Mother Nature. We also refined the urban stormwater boundary and the municipal drains in the urban area to ensure that with the stormwater fee and the drain fees, that people were paying one or the other or not both. So that's another thing we did in 2021. Next slide, please. So for 2022, I have a lot of inflow and infiltration things on this slide, but again, with the report later on in the agenda, I'll speak to things then. But I wanted to highlight our Johnson Street pumping station retrofits and stormwater pond maintenance that was approved in the capital budget. We're going to be moving forward with those. And of course, the big announcement that the mayor made at the last council meeting and got me very excited was our successful application for funding to replace water mains in Port Colborne. So we received over $3.6 million in federal and provincial funding to replace 4 water mains in Port Colborne. So we are going to get 4 water mains for $1.33 million. That's lower than what it's costing us for Erie Street. So that is fantastic. Davis Street is the top of the list. So for the residents on Davis Street, you're going to get a new water main, and it's probably going to be in March. That's what our plan is right now. Berkeley and Homewood and Sugarloaf are the remaining 3 streets that we're doing. Staff are meeting to discuss the order right now, but we know Davis is our number 1 priority after Erie. It always has been. So that's where we're going next. To date, we've had 15 water main breaks, 8 of them in 48 hours in January, and we've had 4 water complaints. And like the municipal drains, we're working on creating an annual maintenance program for our water and wastewater systems. We have annual maintenance programs for water, but wastewater, like I indicated with the new ECAs coming out, we haven't really been formalized. So we're going to get that formalized and get some plans in place so we know what we're doing basically every month throughout the year. And just to note that all single-year projects that we have in water, wastewater are on track to be completed in 2022. There are a few that are multi-year, like the pollution prevention control plan that we're talking about later in the agenda. That is a multi-year project. So the majority of them will be done this year, but there are a few that will carry over. And next slide, I am done. Thank you.
Staff, thank you. That was good. Good year in review. And you guys are busy, we know that. Because we passed the budget. So at this time, I do have 2 councillors that have requested to ask questions. Councillor Wells is up first. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Your Worship. The presentation covered quite a bit of some of the questions I had, but seeing that I'd like to ask a question through you to Director Kalamoto with regards to the capital budget and capital projects that we're doing. We've got about 28 projects that have been carried forward from 2020, from 2021 into 2022. And as we heard in the presentation, our 2022 capital budget is the largest the city's ever had in its history. So I'm just, the question through you to Director Kalamoto is just, can you give us a sense of how confident you feel that you can achieve the 22 capital spend in the budgets?
Mr. Kalamoto?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, to the councillor, all of council, and those watching at home, there are, as of April 30th, there was about a dozen projects from 2020 and about 16 from 2021 that were carried over. Right now, I am quite confident that any single-year projects will be completed for 2022, and those other 28 will be wrapped up. There are, as the manager of water wastewater noted, there are some multi-year projects. Obviously, those won't be done because, per their definition, they're multi-year. So they will be carried over, and I think the managers and myself have gone through a couple of those. However, any of them that are slated to be completed in 2022, I'm fairly confident. I would, however, like just a little bit of cushion of January and February of next year, though.
Okay, Councillor?
Very good. I wish you all the luck and support you on the spend.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. Really good presentation by all 3 of you, and I think I'm a fan of branding, and I think that just the Public Works title I think has gone a long way to say how you work as a team. Not that you were working in silos, but I just think, the message is there. And to that, I'm wondering if you're carrying through with that stationery on the building, will that be changed? Just so that we're sending a unified message, and sort of we're really on the branding kick the last couple of years in the city of Port Colborne.
Mr. Kawamoto?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. We weren't actually going to take a look at the words on the building, just again for ease of understanding for the public to come in. There's kind of an operations side and there's an engineering side. However, what we have done internally with the help of all the managers, the supervisors, lead hands, and all staff all the way down is broken down any silos that were left when we came on board. All three of us have been in our positions for less than a year and a half. And as I stand here now, there is one more manager that needs to be here. But as we start reorganizing and cooperating as a team, those silos I feel have come down and we still have a little bit of work to do, but they're all but eliminated. And as we move forward, as an example, the supervisor of fleet, now we have a process in place where they have to go to the supervisor in charge of that particular asset to ensure the usability, but also go to the other supervisors to see if there are any efficiencies that work utilizing that same piece of equipment. So as we move into this new public works area, we are kind of speaking with one, even though three of us came up and talked, we're kind of still speaking with one voice as we move forward, and there are a lot of interconnections. I do, however, also want to say that we have started additional connections with other areas within the city with regard to economic development or planning or finance, and that is another one that we are reaching out to. So all of the other areas within this corporation, we've reached out quite a bit to HR and to communications, and again, I'd like to still publicly apologize to all the work that we give them because again, we are tearing down a lot of those silos and working more collectively, hand in glove.
Thank you. And the only other question I had was actually exactly Councillor Wells's question to a T. I did want to add one thing. I mean, I've seen the growth in people who are now had a little time, which is always a benefit in their new positions. And you can see it reflected in both the reports, but more importantly, in the action. So I think there are a number of highlights in each one of your presentations that, seeing is believing, and people have seen it. But hearing what we all hear, we know what's behind all that work. The one thing I want to challenge you and the department on, back to the capital works question, I have no problem with that issue of, you've now got a full team. You might need January and February, but I would really like to see from a measurement point of view, so that at the end there's no doubt. And measurement can come with an explanation if it can't happen. But you mentioned a number, so for us, looking at that vast list of projects, I'd really like you to put a number on the 1-year jobs and the multiple ones, just so at the end of the day, we're all looking at the same number, and you and the department is judged by, these were 1 years, right? You did it. And then I think at the end of the year, if all things go as I think your team can do, I think at the end there's a measurable way to say, great job, rather than just individual highlights. So wondering if you could come back with that at some point. Thank you, Chris.
Great. Mr. Colborne?
Yes, through the mayor to you, we can absolutely identify which projects will be calendar year projects as they're approved by budget, and which would be multi-year, 100%. And as we move through some of the current projects that we have, as mentioned, the infrastructure needs study, the energy conservation demand management plan, and others, what I'll be coming back to council with is a 5-year capital plan based on those documents and those plans. So you'll see those. There'll be facility plan based on building condition assessments and AODA. So we'll have a 5-year plan with that. there'll be one based on energy conservation, and there'll be one based on linear assets. So we'll definitely be coming back to council with those, and we can identify which ones will be 1 year, calendar year, and which ones will be multi-year. While I have the pulpit, if I can, the CIO did mention, as councillors come in and have less to talk to staff about during council meetings because things have been taken care of or go through customer service, I'd like to think that we've taken care of them on a proactive approach, and that's why we're hearing less from the councillors. So just wanted to point that one out there and give kudos to all the staff, both from the management perspective of Public Works, but especially the front lines. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Clayliff.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was just talking with Chris prior to the meeting tonight to let him know. Had an incident on the weekend and it went so well I couldn't believe it. I had a call, an upset resident needed to have something done. I said, I didn't get to talk to them. I actually went to their house to see what was going on. By the time I could get back to them, got in touch with them, they had been in touch with the service department, called them back, told them it was in the queue. I told them everything was going on, which I'd been made aware of. And I went back the next day, and the dirt work was done. I couldn't believe it. It was like, and it was a big job, but not, it wasn't major or anything, but I mean, the speed with which it happened was phenomenal, and the people were just unbelievable that it could happen so quickly. And I said, if you follow through the process and get it through the right people, it's a lot quicker than coming to me as a councillor and then me going to the department and everything else. So I think the message is finally getting out there, the more that we can tell people. But it was a great service piece, like Chris said. I was really pleased with what happened.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Further questions? Don't see anything. Okay, duly moved and seconded. All in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried unanimously. Item 8.2 is the expropriation of parts of Bridge, Lock Street and Park Avenue in Central Park subdivision. The recommendation that Chief Administrative Office Report 2022-92 be received, and that the expropriation of parts of Bridge, Street, Lock Street, and Park Avenue in the Central Park subdivision, registered as Central Park Plan of Subdivision 836 for the Village of Humberston, described as Parts 1, 2, 3, and 4, Reference Plan 59R-17185, be approved, that the acting city clerk and mayor be directed to sign this certificate of approval pursuant to the Expropriations Act and all other documents necessary to effect the expropriation of the lands, subject to the satisfaction of the city solicitor. Councillor Wells, and I'll ask Councillor Danch to second that. Councillor Wells, you have a question?
Yes, Your Worship. Through you to, I believe, Gary or Bram, probably Bram, because we've been corresponding. Expropriations sometimes are a nasty word and people don't like them. And with regards to this one here, there are some presumptions that the owners of the properties are deceased or not available to provide any resistance for the expropriation. Can you briefly give us some confidence in that we will be able to achieve this expropriation, because we do really want to see that park built. We think it'd be an asset for the community on the east side there, and it'll help tie together the rest of the parks network.
Mr. Cotton?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wells and all of council. In talking to our city solicitor, this is the correct process for us to take to do this. We have done public notice. We have not had any respondents to our public notice at this point. There has been no contact with any owners or any associated folks with this property in about 30 years. So at this point, we feel that this is the best approach to take, the best course of action, and we're confident that we'll continue down this path, and the approval of this report is that next step down that path.
Councillor?
Thanks, Bram. It's good to hear that we have that much advantage on this one here. So thank you very much, and good luck with it.
Thank you. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship, through you to Bram. My question is always about when. So I'm just wondering if, when you've talked to our solicitor, the length of this process if all things go straightforward. Have you been given a timeline by them as to when we'll be able to then have a solution in place and take the next step?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bruno and to the rest of council. So this is the next step in the process. Once this step has been done, we do have to do another public notice. From that point, there is an expropriation survey that has to be filed within 90 days, which we're prepared to file once it's done, and it has to be registered. And I believe when we started this process, we were told about 18 months. By the time we're finished, I would say 18 months will be December. So I believe by the end of this year, or at least early next year, we will be in a position that we can move forward with having this in our possession.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further questions? Seeing none, just for those watching on TV, this has to do with Lockview Park, which we thought we owned forever. But Bram, can you give us, especially those watching, can you give us an idea of how far back this plan of subdivision goes that was never completed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, this was registered in 1914, or the city, I believe, sold this in 1914. And there's been no contact with the owners since then. It came to the surprise of some folks when we discovered that the roadway ran through the middle of an old baseball diamond and soccer field that the city was maintaining. And so we've started moving forward to expropriate so that we can do the work that we feel is necessary within the park.
Great, thank you, Mr. Cotton. Seeing no further questions, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. Next is item 8.3, fishing tournaments and grant framework. The recommendation is that Corporate Services Department Report 2022-80 be received. The Council approve the associated fishing tournament grant framework attached to Report 2022-80 as Appendix A. The Council delegate authority to staff to allocate the approved budgeted grant funding up to a maximum of $25,000, waive user fees, and provide approval for use of H.H. Knoll Lakeview Park, subject to the conditions set out in the fishing tournament grant framework. I have Councillor Wells and Bruno moving that. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Director Bowles, if I may. When we first started, or maybe not when we first, when I first got involved with this through council, I was a little bit concerned that we weren't getting our bang for the buck, if you will. And I know that we've done a survey in 2021 and that you have some plans for improving the survey so that we can get more substance to support the investment into these tournaments. Can you explain a little bit more about the survey and what you're doing in order to inform the public and us of why we should be doing these?
Mr. Bowles?
Yeah, through the mayor, to council, and to the councillor, I appreciate the time to talk a little bit about this. The survey that was done in 2021 is attached, and council can see it. And I think there's 7 or 8 questions there, and you can take a look at the detail there. Staff reviewed it and had a conversation with the tournament organizers, and the tournament organizers for the number of fishing tournaments have all agreed that they'd be willing to push this on their participants to be able to have them do this survey in greater detail next year, being this year, 2022. And one of the things we're hoping to make adjustments is actually to build in quantitative metrics to actually talk about dollars spent and to build out the questions along that line. When we looked at the survey and we were trying to work with this, it was kind of maybe a first step in 2021, and we hope to take it to another extensive step in 2022, so we can try to calculate the true economic benefit of spending this $25,000 of taxpayer funds. One of the things I'll point out is one of the goals of the report in an Appendix A when we tried to come up with the scoring model, it was to try to actually give points, and that's going to be another avenue for us to be able to talk to council and to be able to present to council what the economic benefit is. And when you take a look at that, you'll be able to see that we're looking to award points for impressions and getting the word out about the city of Port Colborne, as well as being able to drive participants here, not just from local areas, but also from areas such as outside of Ontario and into the United States, which we know when we're bringing more people into the city, they're staying longer, they're having an opportunity to spend more and to engage in our tourism. So we're hoping between a combination of the point system that hopefully aligns the city and the tournament organizers, as well as some adjustments to the survey, we're able to give a full picture as we go into the 2023 budget system. So we will present to council once we get through the tournaments and we get the responses back. We won't wait a whole year to show you the responses. But if there certainly is any questions or any ideas that councillors may want to include in the survey, we're going to be working on it this month to try to have it ready to go as the tournaments start in June, towards the end of June. So we'd be happy to take any of those recommendations or comments. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor?
Thank you. Very well. Very well done. I'm very pleased that we're coming up with a scoring model and something that we can use to substantiate not only fishing tournament, but I hope it can be done through other programs that we're looking at sponsoring. Thank you, Brian.
Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. I was so glad last year that Councillor Wells brought this up because I think it's one of the things that we really need to have data on. And in talking to one of the tournament, it's actually one of the tournament organizers who was the biggest advocate of this, because if you're doing things right and you've got a good tournament, you don't want to see others that take advantage of that, or at the end of the day, there could be more money for them. And I love the idea that you went with minimums, because I think if, in the end of the day, we've got a first-class marina and first-class tournaments, they go together. If you have a first-class marina and you have a tournaments that are here and here, I think you've got a deal. If you're going to be quality, then be quality all the way through. I think the only comment that I would make is that I think there's a concern that because this is the post-COVID startup and nobody knew where they were going, I know some tournament organizers also got off to a late start. So I know there's people that have had 80, 90 participants that now, because of we got this in place and they had it, some folks have made other plans, not to fish, but to go on vacation somewhere. So I think, 2022 may not be a 2019 pre-COVID year, but I think you've addressed that in setting the minimums. I was just wondering if I see in your point score there, somebody that comes from outside of Port Colborne is still doing, from Niagara, is still doing the fuel thing, maybe a rental, certainly the launch. And I didn't know if you just wanted to measure out of Niagara only as a metric. Maybe it's out of Port Colborne in Niagara and elsewhere, because I think it would provide some good data. But you may not have to if you've got the questions, and that's the idea. But just overall, I think it's a great idea, and I think it just, when you keep the quality up, I think that's the secret for us going forward. Thank you very much for all the hard work.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Item 8.4, funding for inflow and infiltration projects. Recommendation that Public Works Department Report 2022-88 be received. That Council approve $561,900 of funding for the 2021 inflow and infiltration projects from the wastewater reserves. I'll have Councillor Wells and Bruno move that. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Worship. In reading this, I felt I needed a little bit more detail in regards to what we would be receiving. So if through you to Darlene, if we could, I understand that your part of the process is to have some pilot studies performed, and that these pilot studies will bring back alternative approaches. Can you explain that a little bit more so we get a little bit more understanding of what we would expect for our money?
Stoddard?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wells. Yes, one of the projects, specifically the Project A in the report, the investigation of innovative stormwater management strategies for the Omer Area Drainage Investigation Focus Area. There is the focus of that study is, as I said in the past, we have done Omer area in 2010. There were some properties in a specific area, roughly bounded by Franklin to the north, Wallace to the south, Woodside Drive to the west, and the Welland Canal to the east, which is the focus area. There were 25 connections. For instance, some pumps in that system that were identified being connected to the sanitary collection system. The consultant of that day went and looked at the stormwater system in that area and determined it was not in good enough shape in order to take the flows from the additional sump pumps. And the cost to reconstruct that stormwater in 2014, when they did the price, was just over $6.2 million. So this study would look at innovative alternatives to pipes, basically, understanding that we have a limited stormwater budget, and we're hoping that we can find more cost-effective ways to deal with the stormwater in areas like this, because we have areas throughout the city that are urbanized, they're older neighborhoods, they don't have a constructed stormwater system. So we're hoping that they're going to come up with some suggestions for different alternatives, maybe some low-impact development, maybe it could be having soakaways on the person's property where they could redirect their sump pump to. Things have really changed in 10 years since that study was done, so we're hoping that they'll come up with some innovative approaches that will be more cost-effective, and then we'll roll out a pilot study. So the first phase is to come up with some alternatives. The second phase is to actually do some pilot studies in that area. And our hope is that these pilot studies will be successful and will give us alternatives to just pipes. Because stormwater is very expensive to build. So if we can come up with some cost-effective alternatives that are going to work, then we can roll it out to more older established neighborhoods in the city as well. And that way address some of the stormwater issues we have, get people out of our sanitary collection system, so we can reduce the inflow and infiltration into those systems. So we don't know exactly what those pilot studies will look like, but that is why we need to do the study to find out what alternatives are out there, and we need some folks that that specialize in that to come and talk to us.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you, Darlene. That's a good explanation. One question that comes out of that, when you do some of these pilot studies, will the residents be participating in some of those? Will some of these involve some of the actual seeing of the inflow and infiltration?
Ms. Stoddard?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. That is actually, we are hoping that we'll target areas that were identified in 2010 as having connections and going to those residents and offering them to participate in the pilot study at no cost. It will be completely the city's cost, and hopefully we have enough budget to do more than one. And again, that would end up hopefully being more cost effective than having to build all new stormwater systems.
Councillor.
That's great. The more data we have, the better solutions we have and better decisions we can make. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. I had a conversation with Darlene. She's kind enough to work around my schedule today to ask him. So I'm really down to one question, and that is items D and E are really part of this new ask and the latest approval that's been given. So, my concern is, in sort of what twigged it, was all your good information in your last report about manholes, sewer line repairs, maintenance holes. So I'm wanting to see how you can use all of that manhole, sewer line dollars fast, because every day it's not done, money's going down the drain, so to speak. So is your intention on Project E, the 300,000, how long will that take? When will you be able to start, or do you know at this point?
Stoddard?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruno. Yes, we actually, our water wastewater supervisor is currently working on the tender documents for the maintenance hole inspection, maintenance hole repairs and the mainland sewer repairs. There's going to be 2 tenders issued because there aren't many companies that can do both. So we're going to have 2 tenders go out, and we're hoping in the next month at the most. And then those repairs will definitely be done before the end of the year.
Great.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Now we move on to item 9.1, which is under the correspondence. This is with regards to the moving transit forward, initial transition activities and next steps. The Regional Council requests the local area municipalities to submit their recommendation for representatives for the Transitional Transit Commission Board based on the criteria outlined in the report to the Regional Clerk by April 29th. We're a little bit past that. So in reality, what we're looking for, Council, is a member of Council to sit on this transition committee. Anything to add, Mr. CAO?
So I guess, through your worship to Council, sorry, I'm losing my voice. The CAOs in Niagara, there's another committee that has a name, that IMT, Inter-Municipal Transit Working Group, IMTWG, which has members from every municipality. I was the member on behalf of Port Colborne. The Linking Niagara Together, LTNC, which is a committee of regional councillors. We've all been sort of working towards this transit initiative. I know it hasn't been before this council very often. The regional updates that come about once or twice a year, and the motions for the triple majority is the most that this council has seen. But there has been a lot of work taking place behind the scenes, and really this next initiative is to get to the start of next year, which is one regional transit and one transit commission. And that transit commission would be just like, if you can imagine, the St. Catharines Transit Commission today, or the Welland Transit Commission, or the Niagara Falls Transit Commission, but for all of Niagara and with representation from all of Niagara. There's also a second committee that will have stakeholder groups, accessibility, poverty, employment, representatives for all of those sort of seniors, representatives for all those, from all those communities within our community to help with transit advisory. Those will both exist presumably forever and help to administer transit in Niagara. This is an interim committee, and it's kind of, the mayor and I were sort of looking at it through a lens today and realizing that it could be for only a few months until the swearing in of the next term of council, if the person we appoint today decides not to run for council or for whatever reason is not on the next council. And then it could be only for a few months later after that until we get the final transit commission. But they are acting for an elected official. I know some municipalities, when we get to Conservation Authority or one of these other agencies, it can be a stakeholder, a community, an environmentalist, an outdoors person, a person with experience with engineering or hydrogeology or so on. They're looking for an elected official here. So it's not a chance for us to tap a community member on the shoulder, but I think that opportunity comes when the final commission is being selected a year or more down the road. So that's before you. I can't speak to the number of meetings or the exact demands on your time, but I hope that someone will step forward and represent Port Colborne alongside the representation we already have.
Volunteers? Maybe we need a voluntold or volunvoted. Councillor Desmarais.
I would do it.
Good, thank you, Councillor Desmarais, appreciate that. So I'm going to have a motion. I'm going to have Councillors Beauregard and Clayliff move that we appoint Councillor Desmarais to the new Transitional Transit Commission Board. Before there's any questions, because I'm not going to take any, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Councillor. It's funny because it's a little bit of deja vu, because both Councillor Bodner and I sat on this 20 some odd years ago when this all started, and I just can't believe it took this long, and finally this council, Barb, to actually get a one transit in Niagara. Like, it's a little ridiculous. But anyways, a lot of hard work, as the CAO said, behind the scenes by a lot of people, including staff and some municipalities with regards to transit. So it's a good day for Niagara. So it's a great day for Port Colborne now that we have our councillor on there. So again, thank you. Okay, so items 9.5 and 9.6, which are under your correspondence items, if I could raise those in together, because they both have, they're both associated. If I could have Councillors Bruno and Councillor Wells put those on the floor. The first one, because we're going to have Mr. Kalamoto give us a bit of an overview on these, and I know there's some questions. The first one is with regards to, it was a motion that I brought forward, supported by Regional Council, Councillor Butters, and it was seconded by Mayor Redekop from Fort Erie, because their issues are very similar to ours. But it was a report, PW 14-2022, from April the 5th of this year, respecting inspection of regional water infrastructure, that it was received, and the following recommendation was approved: that staff be directed to consult with the area municipalities to review options for reinstating a water loss committee to collectively review strategies for targeted investigation and reduction of water loss, with a goal of providing an update to regional water loss, or to the 2007 regional water loss report, which Councillor Bruno spoke about earlier. It's being circulated to us, and that the Public Works June meeting will have an update on that. That's item 9.5. And item 9.6, which we tied in with these, again, Mayor Redekop, myself, and with the help of Councillor Butters, was that the report PW 11-2022, dated April 5th of this year, respecting inspection programs and condition of Niagara Regional trunk sanitary sewer infrastructure, be received for information, be circulated to the area local municipalities, and a copy of that is enclosed for your reference. So I'm going to call on Mr. Kalamoto at this time, because he's got some insight on this since this has been put forward at Regional Council, and how it's going to work with regards to the municipality, and then we'll take questions. Mr. Kalamoto?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to maybe ask for the assistance of the Water and Wastewater Manager, but what I'll begin with is that these issues that we are tackling are universal throughout the province and probably throughout the country. What we do need as a two-tier system is cooperation, and with regard to these being in front of council, I believe that this is a great first step, looking both at our water and our water loss and our I&I, with regard to not just our system, and now the regional systems itself. So as you can see from the reports, the region have done some good work, and again are looking at collaboratively working with the local municipalities within Niagara region. With regard to water, they're looking at rehab, measurements versus estimations, monitoring programs, etc. And as you heard from our manager, luckily our water loss has gone down 17%, but there still is a long way to go. So they are going to be convening a meeting before the end of this month to take a look at that and kick off this program, specifically with regard to water. Now, with regard to wastewater, it is obviously we have, as you've seen in the reports tonight and previous reports from the manager of water wastewater, that we are looking under every rock. We are taking action. We are investigating, doing our own rehab and measurements and monitoring and estimates. And the region, through this report, has also started that. Again, collectively, we would like to see a little bit more. We will be speaking with the region, specifically with regard to some missing pieces that we see in these reports. I'm going to mention just wet wells within the pumping stations that are not noted, but to me, this is an excellent start, well on our way, and nice to see a collaborative approach throughout the region. I'm not sure if the manager has anything else to add from maybe her history behind this area.
Ms. Stoddard?
through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. Yeah, this is something I've actually been asking for 10 years from the region, so I was very gratified to see the motion you made at council, regional council, and very gratified to see that they are taking action on it. And we already received our invitation today to the Water Loss Committee. Chris and I were both received our invitation. The meeting is on May 31st. So we're very excited to collaborate with them. And our wastewater folks the local folks have been amazing to deal with. When we had the rainfall event back in July, where we had widespread sewer backups throughout the city, they have been nothing but accommodating and getting us information, working with us, giving us a heads up if they see something going on, setting up procedures. So I think this is just going to go a long way towards working together, because it isn't just a Port Colborne problem. We're like I said, Chris said, we're two-tier. The region has the plants, they have transmission mains, they have force mains, they have pumping stations. They have a role to play as well in this. So it's great to see them coming to the table with us and working with us on that.
Great, thank you. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. I think this is the point where the politicians can make the difference. I'm sure that there was always been, I don't think anybody goes to the region water or wastewater job in the morning and says, how can I do a bad job, or how can I not do something for this city? And I think it's important that at your level that cooperation continues, and cooperation can prove nothing but benefits. Having said all that, this is an issue of money and priorities. So I'm not surprised that it's been 10 years. Unlike ourselves, if regional water mains leak, there are zero consequences to the region. The water leaves the plant, the meter's there. If it leaks, we pay. That's the accountability right now in a two-tier system. And so at some point, good planning at the region, whether it's water, and I'll be saying the same thing about wastewater, is that you've got to help the group that has the worst issue. Because we're a small city, we actually have, and the numbers showed in that last chart underwater, we don't have as many kilometers, even per capita, as a lot of other places. The good news around that ought to be you can rehabilitate. There's no, on the water side, any reference to the age of those in a chart like there is with wastewater, where it says older. So for context, you got 7 point some odd kilometers in Port Colborne, but really that's low on the side of all the municipalities. What does that say in a regional system? It's a large pile of money comes in from all of it. So treat the person with the worst problem first. You can get in and out of Dodge with us in 7.2 kilometers. I mean, you've got 30 enclosures here. We have 7. If any of those have been leaking, they're leaking every day and for years. And so at the end of the day, I believe it's only the politicians with the support of our staff is to say, look, here's where we rank in flows. You know what we're paying. You've got to step forward and do something for us that's out of the ordinary. So, I mean, it's not a secret that this term and the next term, and I know Chris has said it before, our issue is water and wastewater. We're doing other things really well, but if there's any place we need help, if there's any single biggest complaint from a citizen in Port Colborne, it's the water and wastewater rates. Doesn't look good at us for development, and it sure is costing a limited amount of taxpayers a lot of money. And every day, those pipes get older. And again, there is no consequence for the region. If it leaks, they get their money. And we can't fix their mains. So they have to be fully responsible. So it's my plea to Barb and to Bill, and I know you guys have been on it, is they do the working with the staff, but we need to get our name at the top of the list. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, quite frankly, Councillor, Mayor Redekop and I made that point very clear at the region, because we are the worst, but we're smaller.
Yeah.
So it's good to see that our staff is now included in this. They can take the data from 2007, although it's fairly old now, but it moved forward, because you're correct, and that's one argument that both of us made, was the fact that our ratepayers pay for this, yet there is no consequence for the region to have a leaky sewer line or a leaky water line. They could care less, quite frankly. I don't say they do, but they could, and because they're not paying for it, it's our local ratepayers that are paying for it. It's not even that it's spread throughout the region. So it's a very local issue. So I know with staff moving forward here, specifically Mr. Kalamoto's experience in his former position with water, wastewater, I think we'll have somebody at that table with really good insight on how we want to move forward. But we can also tell them what we're doing. So it's not like saying, hey, you've got a problem, but we're not doing anything about ours. We're tackling the bull by the horns with regards to our water, wastewater issues here in the city of Port Colborne. So, we look forward to you guys carrying our banner. And believe me, Barb and I carry our banner pretty high in this issue, along with our friends from Fort Erie. So, great, thank you. Any further questions? So sorry, Councillor Walls.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Darlene. In the 9.6, it mentions, it talks about pollution conservation or pollution programs, the pollution prevention and control plans, and I noticed our city wasn't in there. Is there anything we can do to help provide the plan as a council? Is there things that are in the way that we need to get out of the way so we can get a plan put in place?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, actually in the report you just passed was one of the items was a pollution prevention control plan. So the region, again, this is where the region's been great. They're actually taking the lead on developing the RFP terms for us. They've had experience. The gentleman at the region we're working with has done the PPCP for a pollution prevention control plan for Grimsby, Lincoln, West Lincoln, I believe, together. So he is on it. He is getting all the specifications together for us, and that is one of the multi-year projects. So we're going to start flow monitoring in our sanitary sewer system this year to get a baseline so that we know when in dry weather what happens when it gets wet, identify the areas in the city based on that data, give it to a consultant who will then look at the overall and develop a PPCP for the entire city. So it's probably about a 3-year process, according to our regional counterpart who has just done this. And we are on it, hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
Councillor?
Excellent, thank you. The sooner we're at it, the sooner we get it done.
Great, thank you. Mr. Kalamoto?
To the Mayor, if I can just add to what the manager was saying, is that we actually have the draft terms of reference that was delivered to us. And when the manager mentioned what the best solution is, that can either be regional or local. So just wanted to point that out and make sure as part of this pollution prevention control plan, PPCP, that depending on what the issue is, the solution may be a regional solution. And that's what the manager and I are sitting down with the region in a cooperative manner, because there is only one taxpayer, and it is the best solution for the issue, not necessarily the local Port Colborne solution or the regional solution. But when you take a look at it as our system is in a one taxpayer-based system, we're going to take a look at the most efficient solution to those. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So any further questions on 9.5 and 9.6? Okay, they've been duly moved and seconded to receive. All in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Great, thank you, Council. There are no motions this evening. Are there any notices of motion? Okay. We have one set of minutes for the Port Colborne Museum Board, March 15th, 2022. If I could have Councillor Beauregard and Clayloff move that. Are there any questions on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Bylaws. We have bylaws 20.1, 20.2, 20.3, 20.4, 20.5. This evening, if I could have Councillors Desmarais and Danch move the bylaws. Are there any questions to any of the bylaws? All in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. That's carried. We are moving into in-camera this evening, Council. We will take a 10-minute recess before we go in there to allow Councillor Bodner to come in under a different Zoom address. So at this time, I have Councillors Desmarais and Beauregard move that Council do now proceed into closed session to address the following matters. 21.1 minutes of the closed session portion of April 26, 2022 Council meeting. 21.2 Chief Administrative Office Report 2022-38, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. And 21.3 Chief Administrative Office Report 2022-85, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. Questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried, so we'll go into a 10-minute recess while we set up in the other